Hello, I'm Rosie, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. The Sin Eater's Daughter is about a girl called Twila who finds out she has the ability to kill people with touch, and as such she ends up in the palace as the executioner for treason. She also finds out she's betrothed to the prince because the royal family are blessed by the gods. The same gods that gave Twila her power are blessed the royals so that they do not die when Twila touches them. So Twila is engaged to the prince, and the story is about her fitting into the royal world and essentially finding love. This book is another one that I'm very mixed upon. Twila is an interesting character. She has these abilities. She goes from basically rags to riches, a family where she's been brought up to eat food off the coffins of the dead for a living, to being one where she's going to be a princess, a royal, but at the cost of her ability to touch others. What I found really disappointing was the fact the story did not really touch upon how much this affected Twila. She was afraid of touching people, yes, but Melinda Salisbury did not really go into the kind of emotional, psychological depth. I don't know whether this is me talking as a psychologist, but there has got to be some psychological impact of going from a family where you can hug your sister and bump into people without consequence to being essentially isolated. She cannot touch anyone, she cannot go near anyone, or else they will die. And I found it kind of lacking in the fact that she did not seem to be struggling as much as I kind of hoped she would. I don't know whether that's slightly sadistic, but that's how I felt. And when the love triangle came into it, that just kind of frustrated me even more. Twila is engaged to the prince, who makes up one corner of this triangle. Twila makes up another, and then there's Leaf, who is the third. Leaf is a guard that comes in and takes over when Twila's favourite guard becomes ill, and they essentially fall in love very, very quickly. I have multiple reasons for disliking this part, but the main reason being that the majority of the start of the story is about how Twila is finding it hard to trust people. The majority of her guards get reassigned. They leave her, basically. The only one that has stayed with her the whole time is Doran. And she spends a lot of it wondering what she will do if Doran leaves her, because at the moment he is the only one she can trust. Then he leaves her. He becomes very ill, and Twila automatically trusts this new guard that comes onto the scene. Admittedly, he's a young man, and from what I gather, quite attractive. But for all the time spent on talking about Twila's trust issues, they do not come into as much play as they should have done. The romance should have been slow to build. It should not have been so passionate so quickly. And because of this, I had real trouble believing it. I did not like Leaf at all. Like, when I was first reading it, I was just like, why do you like this guy? He's charismatic, and I'm sure he's showing you things that you did not know before. It just annoyed me, and I just didn't like him. I found him very creepy, and I found the relationship too fast moving, especially for someone who knows she cannot touch people and refuses to let herself get truly close to anyone. Her relationship with Merrick, on the other hand, someone she knows she will be able to touch, is gradual. They dislike each other at the start, but as the story goes on, I found myself wanting them together more and more. Their relationship felt real. Her relationship with Leaf felt forced. That's the main trouble I had reading it. I think, knowing the ending, I will go back and on a reread and enjoy it so much more. I think Melinda's done that quite well with the lead up to the end, but I just did find that a bit irksome. Plot-wise, I did enjoy this. I thought it built up quite well. Like, you start off with Twiller in the castle, and then the whole thing is essentially set in this castle. So it's quite a small, cramped place with very few kind of cast members. But Melinda's done it quite well, so you can get the dynamics of how everything works, and you kind of appreciate the characters so much. Like, I really like the King and Queen, even though they were so completely different. The Queen was devastatingly evil. I really like that about her. I have a thing for evil queens. I don't know why. And I found the King to be just really kind of nice, and I found myself just rooting for him in a way. Like, I felt like I knew enough about the characters to kind of feel for them, except for Doran. I wish I'd known more about Doran, because by the time it got to the end of his part of the story, I just didn't really care about him. It had not as much effect as I would have liked it to have. But the plot was really interesting. It kept me, like, I was basically, after about 100 pages, I was hooked. Like, I really wanted to know what happened and what happened with Twiller. And the twists were great. Like, they just came out of nowhere. Like, I really like the part about Twiller's power and how she got the power. I thought that was really, really well done and interesting. And like, the other twists were really cool. And I'm really looking forward to reading the next one. I really want to see where the story goes. The epilogue just, I think I just don't like epilogues, but this epilogue annoyed me. Like, it was just a small bit as well. Like, throughout the novel, there is a lot of time spent on the fact that Twiller cannot read. She cannot read at all. Not a word. She struggles to read words. Leaf starts to teach her. Not much progress is made, given everything else that happens. Epilogue is set a few months after the end of the rest of the book. In it, she is reading and has read loads of books. Now, I don't know about the process of learning to read. It's been a while since I learned to read, but as far as I'm aware, you do not learn to read that quickly, especially books, old books that are not specifically designed for learning to read, that you are reading on your own. It says a few months after. I don't know how many months that is, but if it had been a few years, I would have got it a bit more. But I did find it really, really distracting how, after spending so much time talking about how Twiller cannot read, she is suddenly reading. But yeah, aside from that, that's probably my, I'm going to have small bits in every book I read that just really annoy me. But yeah, the last paragraph of the epilogue was really good. I enjoyed that, and it just made me want to find out what's going to happen. It sets up for the next book quite well, and I really like the lore, the folklore about the world in this book. Like, the world building, while not as expansive as I would have liked, I really like world building, but it was like, I felt I could belong in that world. I understood the bits of folky lore, the Sin Eater and the Sleeping Prince. I really like those additions. It kind of because in this world we have our own fairy tales, we have our own customs, and it felt nice that knowing in that world they had the same, and just kind of made it feel a bit more real. The fact that it was about a royal family, and they talked about neighbouring countries and the politics and all that, it made it more real to me, and I did enjoy that part of it. So I did really enjoy this book. I was not a big fan of the cover. I've seen other versions of this cover and I kind of like them more. Like, the writing on it just kind of screams child's book to me, and I think with some of the content in here, I think it would have been better to have a bit more teen screaming at me rather than child. I thought this was like an 11-year-old's book, but reading it, it's more of a kind of 14, 15-year-old. Even though that's way younger than me, I still enjoyed the book. It was an easy read, not too complicated, but also good enough that I got engrossed in the story and found myself rooting for the characters. Although I did find, admittedly, Twiller was a bit of a passive character. I can't really picture anything right now, like nothing comes to mind where she did something for herself. So I really hope in the next book, now that she's grown up a bit, like the epilogue leads to that a bit more, of the fact that she is less of a passive character and more of an active one. I think in the next book that'll become more of a thing, and I think I will enjoy the next book a bit more than this one if Melinda Salisbury includes more of the intrigue and the politics and the world. I really want to find out more about the world. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy this, and I'm quite glad I picked it up from the bookshop because I was debating it to start with. But yeah, I do recommend reading it, and I think it's also quite popular at the moment. I know it had like a whole stall to itself in the bookshop, which is why I was first drawn to it. It's like, ooh, special book. But yeah, 3.5 stars. I have high hopes for the future of the series, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Goodbye!